Hi guys, I'm back with another sewing tutorial. Like my others, this is going to be a hand sewing tutorial. And this sewing tutorial is going to be about how to make a coffee cup sleeve or cozy. I found this flannel material on, I believe it was eBay. And then I also went on the internet and found a pattern for a coffee cozy. It came in two parts, and then I just taped the parts together. So where the two parts intersect, that's where the center of the image that I really want is going to be located. So of course I chose Hobbie. I want to make sure she's in the middle of the design. And so the pattern calls for 2 layers of the material and also a layer of batting. So this is the pieces after I got them cut up. So the batting is mostly just for insulation. And then we got 2 layers of Hobbie. So I've got the layer of batting sitting on top of one of the layers of material. So when you're working with batting, it's really easy for the batting just to get slippery and not stay where it's supposed to. So what I'm gonna do is first clip it to the fabric. And then we're going to actually sew it down into the fabric. So this sewing that we're going to be doing, it's what I would call a light stitching. This is just some stitching that's going to keep it in place while we're sewing the project. We don't need it to be sturdy. We don't need it to, withstand, tugs or anything like that. It just needs to, the stitching just needs to be in place long enough for the batting not to move when we're sewing together the other parts. So it's a very delicate stitch that we're going to be doing. Basically, we are going to be sewing a stitch through the batting and just barely piercing the fabric on the other side, just enough to kind of grab it to keep it in place. But the stitching doesn't need to go through the Hobbie fabric. So it's a very gentle and easy stitch that we're going to be doing. And when you're first sewing, you may not be able to tell exactly how far the stitch actually went through. So, and you can easily tell just by putting your finger through the 2 layers. And as you saw, the first time I did a stitch, it did not go through far enough, but the second one did. And then you just kind of check and make sure you're not actually putting any kind of stitching through the exterior fabric. And after you do a few stitches, you can kind of feel the difference between, a stitch that did not even touch the fabric. And you can always just rub your finger on the outside just to see if the stitching is there. So I'm doing this kind of stitching just so I can use either side of the material. It's going to be exactly the same on the inside as the outside. This makes it so you can easily just flip it around if you want to. But if that is not a concern for you, you can certainly just do a plain basting stitch and get through it a whole lot faster. Completely your choice. So here's what it looks like when it's done. And the stitching is just so very light. You could, probably just pull the batting apart with your fingers if you wanted to. You could just rip it off because it's not a very secure stitch at all. But none of the stitches is through the other side, so I've achieved my goal. So now we're just going to place the two right sides together. And we're going to use our clips again. And these clips are really nice because if the clips end up being about 1/2 inch. So I know no matter what I do, the clipping measurement is never going to be more than 1/2 inch. So you can easily, there's some very almost invisible lines on the clips if you want to make it like 1/4 inch, something like that. But it's just a simple way to measure if you don't have to measure more than 1/2 inch. And it really doesn't matter if it's uneven. The stitching that we're about to do is going to correct any deficiencies that I might have when I'm cutting out the fabric or, trying to make sure everything is right and even. So you don't need to worry if things are a little amiss, if you've got jagged edges like I do, or the batting is just, hanging off the edge. You don't need to worry about that because it's all going to be made right after you do the sewing. When I was just starting to sew, my cutting used to be really jagged. And so I've tried really hard to slow down and create a much smoother cut that isn't so jagged. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's the sewing is really forgiving. So, and nobody's gonna know how perfect of a cutter you are. So these stitches are going to have to be really sturdy, and you'll find out in a moment why it needs to be really sturdy. So I always do 2 stitches, and then for the next stitch I go over the last stitch. So you're kind of doing a single and a single, and then you're kind of doing a double. If I'm saying that right, and I may not be saying that right. So it just creates a little more of a secure stitch. Because when we're done with the sewing around this edge, we're gonna open up the 2 pieces and we're gonna turn them inside out. So you want to make sure that your stitches are secure enough so when you're moving and pulling and tugging at the fabric that the stitches are going to stay in place. So do take your time with this part and just make sure you've got some really sturdy stitches, and try to make them as straight as possible. because the straighter you get your stitches, the straighter it's gonna look when it's finished. So this part is really important. You know, some things you can hide with sewing, like jagged edges or batting that isn't quite cut appropriately. But these stitches need to be really smooth. So this is what it's looking like when it's all stitched up. So I've stitched up 3 of the 4 ends. So with the 4th, we are just gonna open it up. And I do apologize for my horrible bandage. I have a kitten at home and sometimes he likes to attack my hands. So some days I'm walking around with these huge bandages. He's a kitten. He's going to grow out of it. My hands are just going to pay the price for the time being. Okay, back to the coffee cup sleeve. So there's a lot of pulling and tugging, and you know, you just kind of have to work with the fabric until it gives way. And you know, if it's not moving much, take whatever you can get. You know, if you can only move the fabric like an inch at a time, take that inch. You know, don't get frustrated. As long as it's moving some, just keep working at it until you finally get it all through. And then just try to get the ends to poke out as much as you can. I'm just going to pull them a little bit. You can easily, you know, use something like a pen or a pencil to kind of poke those ends out. But I think my hands are good enough for this particular job. So then we just need to turn down these jagged edges. And depending on how particular you are, you can measure or you can, you know, just turn them down willy-nilly, you know, depending on how much of a perfectionist you are. The clips are 1/2 inch, like I said before. So the clips are just an easy way for me to do some quick measurement. It doesn't have to be precise, but I want it to look as good as possible. And trying to fold down this fabric with the batting makes it a little bit of a challenge. So just be patient with yourself and the materials that you're working with. The batting is really important for the sleeve. It'll gives a little more insulation, so your hands don't get burned when somebody's handing you a coffee cup. So it's definitely an important feature. And even though it's sometimes a pain to work with, trying to get everything to lie just right, just be patient and know the batting is going to do its work once you get it all stitched up. And now we just consolidate the clips. And I could not get this little section to lie down right, But, in the end, it doesn't have to lie perfect, because we're going to be stitching it up, and it's not going to be really visible when we're all done with the project. And just keep in mind, this is a coffee cup sleeve. If people are going to be looking at anything, they're probably just going to be looking at Holly Hobbie. They won't be examining your stitches to find out how perfect you are. They're just going to be looking at Holly Hobbie like, oh, I remember her. That's all that people are going to be looking at. So once you've finished one end, we are just going to put the two ends together, and we'll just do our best to line them up and make them look as good as possible. And we're just going to be using the exact same stitch as before. And you want to make sure this is a really snug and secure stitch, because you don't want this stitching to come loose and end up dropping your coffee. That would just be your worst Monday morning ever. So do take your time and make sure you've got a really good stitch. I'm trying to keep my stitches as small as possible so the stitching doesn't stand out too much. And now I'm just going to flip it over to the other side. This step probably isn't necessary, but I just want to make sure it's a really good stitch. It's not going to come apart. And and just correct your stitching as you go. Just take your time no matter what experience level you currently have. So I think this final stitching is really the thing that you want to just make sure it's a really good quality, that it's going to stay put, so you're not going to have to redo it. And I'm doing the same stitch this side as I did with the other side, so you can easily flip these around if somehow you got a horrific stain on one of the sides and you can't get it out, and maybe it's all over Hobbie's bonnet or something. You can easily just flip the cozy over to the other side and the stitching's going to look exactly the same. So this particular item, I am planning on selling it on an Etsy store. I'm still creating my store, but I ordered these fancy little labels with my name on it, Frugal Carrie. So I'm gonna just be sewing this label onto them. I think these labels are really kind of neat if you're a hand sewer and you're, selling your crafts or, giving it away to friends. I think the labels just make it kind of an extra special little thing. And I ordered these labels through Amazon. I found a company that made it just really easy. I got to select the color that I wanted, lavender. And I got to put in my own text, and I even got to chose my own icon. So I decided on a little heart. Just fun things to make your sewing a little more special and a little more unique. And here is the finished coffee cup sleeve. And I've got my little label on the back, which I think makes it so cute. And it's got plenty of batting in there, plenty of stuffing. It's gonna protect anybody's hands when they're gripping their coffee in the morning. And I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Hopefully I'll have an announcement soon about an Etsy store. But until that time, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.